Good morning, Woodside Church family. This is Pastor Vincent Saunders recording for you on Thursday, September 30, 2021 for our Sabbath on October 2. And the title of today's sermon is Ready or Not. Scripture reading comes from Matthew chapter 23, verses 37 through 39. And they're red letters, which means that Jesus said them. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together the way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were unwilling. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate. For I say to you, from now on, you will not see me until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Will you pray with me? Father in heaven, we long to be ready for your second coming. We know it's not a matter of if it will happen, but a matter of when it will happen. And as we review your word today, help us to depend on you for that readiness. We trust you for your faithfulness. In Jesus' name we ask these things. Amen. In 2010, there was a militia group known as the Hutterei, and they claimed to have a Jewish carpenter, Jesus Christ, as their general commanding officer. Well, they had amassed an armory of guns and ammunition in order to prepare themselves for what they thought was the final onslaught of the apocalypse. And media labeled them a doomsday cult. In 2010, the FBI raided several houses of this group, and they were arrested and they were vilified for having an understanding Bible prophecy that magnifies a coming Savior. Were these people right to prepare for an apocalypse? Did they go about preparations in the right way? Did they exclude themselves and create a barrier around themselves that was different than what the good news of the gospel represents? How can we as Seventh-day Adventist Christians understand what the Bible says and be prepared? Because the second coming is happening whether we are ready or not. Jesus aroused the disciples' curiosity when he talked about these events. You see, Matthew 23 and the last week of Jesus's life was so volatile because he was being praised by the people. He was being called Messiah and someone who came in the name of the Lord. In fact, just on Sunday, before what Jesus proclaimed as woes on the Pharisees, we have this incredible entry that comes. And remember what they were saying about him in Matthew 21, 4 and 5? Behold, your king is coming to you, gentle and mounted on a donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden. That's prophecy about when they were going to get that foal. And when he came into Jerusalem, look at what they said. Verse 9, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. That prophecy of Psalm 118:26 was what Jesus foretold these Pharisees that those who see him coming will proclaim. And isn't it interesting how the prophecy was fulfilled on the triumphal entry and will be fulfilled again? Jesus' second coming. And Jesus' prophecy here, Matthew 23, 37 through 39, we get a window into the attitude of heaven regarding the second coming. See, from the Bible commentary, as we read this incredible passage, It states, no sinner will be lost because of inadequate provision on the part of heaven. No sinner will be lost because of inadequate provision on the part of heaven. Heaven, God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and all of the holy angels are doing their part to be ready for this incredible event. We have a part to play to be ready for this incredible event. Now, how does the Bible teach us to be ready? And in Matthew 24, we have those clues. You see, Jesus's attitude and his yearning and his longing to be with his people is so much more than we have as a capacity to be ready for Jesus to come. And as many of the reasons that we put forth for desiring the second coming of Jesus, they pale in comparison to his fervent desire to be with his people, to be with us. As he said to his disciples in the upper room, I've fervently desired to drink this cup with you because I will not drink it again until I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom. So let's look at Matthew 24 and realize that these signs that Jesus gives are to be filtered through the capacity of the first century disciple. We must understand the question that the disciples asked him in verse 3 of Matthew 24. They asked him, tell us, when will these things happen, and when will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Now, this clue, the end of the age, or the consummation, was something that we think about as the great and dreadful day of the Lord. This was something that the Old Testament prophets talked about in their apocalyptic prophecies. They would talk about the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And so the disciples ask about Jesus's prophecy about the house being left desolate and of the temple. And when he said in verse 2, truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another which will not be torn down. That prophecy signaled to them, wow, the destruction of the temple must be the end of the world. And it must be the great and dreadful day of the Lord. But Jesus gives the first clue, and he said in verse 4, watch the first clue that he gives. He says, see to it that no one misleads you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. National Geographic just had a special about the Messiah, the recent Messiah explosion. Many of the people still claiming to be the deliverer of biblical prophecy, the Messiah. In fact, I just saw an ad on one of the main music sites. And I'm sorry, I got a message I need to respond to quickly, but this Maitreya figure that is mythologically supposed to fulfill all of these prophecies of the coming deliverer, he is still being promoted, and he's still being hailed as this Messiah figure. And a lot of people are trying to claim the same thing that Jesus warned about. I have to respond to this message. Sorry about that. That someone's time-sensitive message. Where was I? Matthew 24. He repeats the phrase, do not be deceived. He says it again in verse 23. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here's the Christ, or there he is, do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders so as to mislead, even if possible, the elect, the chosen. So what is this readiness posture that we are to adopt? It's the same type of readiness that Jesus asked for his disciples to portray when they went with him in the Garden of Gethsemane. Does Jesus speak about warning signs leading to the end of time? He does. In Matthew 24 And particularly verses 29 through 31, he says, but immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. This, no doubt, is a particular and important prophecy that shows that Jesus is talking about the end of time, as well as the destruction of the temple. When he is linking these two things together, he is showing to his people that the calamity that comes upon Jerusalem will have similar portents as the signs nearing the end of time. And there's things that are the same and things that are different within this passage. And he emphasizes the readiness factor. He emphasizes the watchfulness factor. He says again, I have told you in advance, do not believe them, in verse 26. So he's trying to emphasize that there's a lot that will mislead many. And there are people that have misled many about the signs of the second coming. You see, there is a lot of misunderstanding about what will happen. And this parable of the fig tree and the parable of the days of Noah are two parables which give a lot of signals, yet are misunderstood. Because within last day events framework of Christianity, there's something within dispensational theology known as the secret rapture, before the great tribulation. This secret rapture is proposed as a pre-tribulation glorification of God's people. And it comes in part from this parable, where Jesus says in verse 36, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son of Man, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. And watch the language here. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking until the day that Noah entered the ark. Now watch the story closely and watch for the clues, because according to the secret rapture, this parable is signaling a division between the righteous and the unrighteous. He's signaling, see, those that propose the secret rapture are comparing this parable and say, you see, those that are taken are those that are raptured. And those that are left are those that are stuck in the tribulation. But watch how the parable is worded. Because God says, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. Those that are taken are not the righteous in the parable here. Those that are taken are the wicked who were not expecting the flood. And there's another parable in verse 40. Then there will be two men in the field. One will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and one will be left. In dispensational theology, those that are left behind are the wicked. But in the parable here, the comparison of those that are taken and those that are left is of the righteous and the wicked. Those that are taken are the wicked, and those that are left, or those that remain, are the righteous. Jesus gives us clues within this parable. And these signs do not mean that we're to be fearful, but we're to be hopeful regarding the second coming. And what signs are we to look for? As I read in verse 29, we will see the sun darkened, the moon quieted, and the stars will fall from heaven. These signs We see meteor showers happen. There's recordings of eclipses and lunar and solar eclipses. So we see that those signs are being fulfilled. What we do also understand, in May 19, 1780, the sun was mysteriously darkened and wasn't an eclipse. And in fact, no scientific explanation was ever given for that event. And the moon didn't shine that night because obviously it reflects the sun. Many thought the day of judgment had come on May 19, 1780. Another event on November 13, 1833 was the greatest meteoric shower ever seen. 200,000 shooting stars fell each hour for 6 hours. Many had read that the stars would fall and were convinced that the end of the world had come and prayed in the streets. It led to a revival. These events did not mark the end of time, but were signs that the world had entered into a period of time known as the time of the end. But it wasn't the end of time because we're still here after 1833, November 18, 1833. Will the end times be a time of proclamation for the gospel? You better believe it. And this is our timing now. We have an opportunity to proclaim that Jesus loves every single person and his sacrifice is sufficient and his grace is available to all. Now, this gospel of the world is going forward. We have solar-powered audio Bibles in many different languages where there's no printed word of someone reading the Bible. Now, there are many languages for which there is no Bible because the languages just don't have any way to write or translate. And so there's more work to be done. But Matthew 24:14 is a prophecy that still continues to go on today. It's the mandate for the world. It says in Matthew 24:14, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. The incredible promise of the gospel going forward is the fulfillment of Jesus's prophecy. And with the advent of the internet, the YouTube, we see a window here where there is freedom of religion and freedom of speech in many regions of the world. We have a lot of work to do in the persecuted world where actually those that understand religious tolerance see religious tolerance shrinking and religious intolerance growing. Because, and I propose to you, that the church has not necessarily provided a clear picture of Jesus Christ to the world. And thus, those freedoms that we see are being taken away. Now, what about the moral corruption that this is leading to? How does this signify the nearness of Christ's coming? Matthew 24, verse 12. This can be something that signaled even the destruction of Jerusalem at that time, but here is something, the sign that we are seeing in this day and age. Because lawlessness has increased, most people's love will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. He or she will be saved. Now, a readiness for Christ's coming will include warmness of love. So in order to prepare for Jesus' second coming, we have to avoid the coldness of heart. Now, this is very crucial for understanding because as Seventh-day Adventist Christians, we, as Ellen White says, we are to be most joyful among all people groups because we have the grace of Jesus Christ and we have access to the forgiveness of sins and the tremendous sufficient mercy of Jesus Christ. Do you want to be ready for Jesus' second coming? Avoid the coldness of heart. Avoid the bitterness of speculation. Give reasonable doubt to those who are in your life. Help them to understand the love of God. Pray to God for more love of others within your heart. Because here's another passage that is meant to reveal the prophetic fulfillment. In Hebrews chapter 10, I've preached about this before, about the full assurance of faith, where we have a prophetic inkling that the love of the church will increase as the time of the end gets closer. It says here, Verses 23 through 25 of Hebrews 10. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Paul is encouraging the church of God to increase in love. John, the beloved disciple, also did this to the church in 1 John. And even in Peter, he says in 1 Peter 4, beloved, let us love one another. No, this is 1 John 4:7. And I'll go back to Peter in a second. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The readiness that we have for Jesus' second coming will be equal for the love that we have in our heart for our fellow humanity. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to understand. And we are taught at Seventh-day Adventists to come out of Babylon and to be exclusive, but I'm challenging that status quo. And here it is in 2 Peter chapter 3, knowing first of all that in the last days mocker will come with their mocking, following after their own lust, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all continues just as it was from the beginning of creation. For when they maintain this, it escapes their notice that by the word of God the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of the water and by water, through which the world at that time was destroyed, being flooded with water. But by his word, the present heavens and earth are being reserved for fire, kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. But do not let this one fact escape your notice, beloved, that with the Lord 1 day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like 1 day. The Lord is not slow about his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing for any to perish, but for all to come to repentance. Is there someone in your life who you've got a grudge against, who you would feel slighted if they were granted the grace that God offers them? Is there someone in your orbit or in your sphere of influence that you would actually be disappointed was afforded the grace of God and actually is in the afterlife eternally? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Is the readiness for Jesus' second coming causing you to give up that grudge against your neighbor? Is the motivation to be eternally with Jesus Christ strong enough to bury the hatchet and bring peace into your life with that person who you are in conflict with? I propose to you that Jesus wants us to be aware of the signs. Jesus wants us to be aware of the false teachers and the false Christ out there. But we would be remiss if we did not ready our hearts by growing in love for our fellow man. Because, as Jesus says, wars and rumors of wars will grow as a result of man's hardness of heart and the love growing cold. Luke chapter 21, the companion passage with all of the discourse, gives us this prophecy. Peace agreements and every effort to bring nations into harmony nearly always fall short of the mark. Because of the world's troubles, the nations are distressed, and men are anxious for the future because they see no solution to men's predicaments. When the atomic age was born, the Trinity test in Los Alamos, we had the power to destroy the entire world, and with it, the entirety of humanity. Now, with the bioweapons that we have, it can be done at the atomic level. In other words, we are dying from inside. We may not have to wait for a bioweapon. In fact, with the Cascadia subduction zone on the verge of eruption, being held just barely held underneath the Pacific Ocean with two massive superheated plumes of gas, between Sacramento and Seattle, we could have beachfront property in Reno. after this Cascadia subduction zone blows. And if that were the case, it wouldn't feel like doomsday to us. But the rest of the world would still keep going on. Yet we would perish in this life if we are not ready each and every day. You know, there are a lot of Seventh-day Adventists that are waiting for world events before they will finally say, this is it. I propose to you in your heart, today is the day of salvation. Today, if you will come and you will know the Lord, he will give you his Holy Spirit and he will convict you of sins that need repentance. I, as a servant of Jesus Christ, attempted to die this morning. I asked for his grace to be sufficient for me, and I die each and every day. And as Paul says, we're crucified with Christ, and the life which we now live in the flesh, we live by faith in the Son of God who loves us. And I love the Bible versions that put that verb, agape, in the present participle, because that's the way the Greek looks at it. Some translations tell us that he loved us, but the love of Jesus Christ is an active force within your life. If you believe that, friends, it is transformative. You see, there is a disparity between the haves and the have-nots, and this pandemic has widened that gap. The have-nots are streaming towards the haves, for hope propels them and motivates them on. James 5:3-4, he signaled that this would be a time of growing disillusionment. Chapter 5, verses 3-4, your gold and your silver have rusted, and their rust will be a witness against you and will consume your flesh like fire. It is in the last days that you have stored up your treasure. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your fields and which has been withheld by you cries out against you, and the outcry of those who did the harvesting has reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts. He uses that incredible, strong Hebrew word in the Greek New Testament, no doubt. Fascinating. In the margin, it describes there how it's still his character. Never forget that Jesus Christ is still the King of Kings and the Lord of hosts, Lord of lords. But when he comes riding on that horse of triumph, he will have a harvest sickle in his hands. There are so many skeptics, as Peter points out. They will mock us Christians, and they're always mocking us. And whenever a highly influential moral agent falls, like Rabbi Zacharias recently or Hillsong recently, the skeptics point to that and say, see, your message is failed. And I'll tell you what, and the influencers who have taken that fall, they are right. But Jesus is unflappable. He's blameless. I think if you can try to soil the character of Jesus, it's just futile. Now, the news and the headlines are abundant with disturbing images and reports. And hasn't this been the way it was since sin entered the world? I mean, now we just have more access to the news, right? I mean, if you look at a figure like William Randolph Hearst, and how he turned newspapers into and became the news himself. It's important to remember that those vehicles with which you receive your news are a means to an end. And so evaluate your sources very critically. And it's important to understand where you're getting your news from. And keep in mind that the news cycle is more feverish than ever these days. But if you were to go back 200 years, and you would imagine you would evaluate how the news cycle was, would you be any more comforted in knowing that the orbit that which you exist has expanded exponentially. And so if you try to find safe harbor in this world, it is still impossible. Let me tell you a little story about a paradise that was turned into a prison. French Guiana served for a time as a prison colony and was made famous by one particular prisoner who was able to escape. It was made popular by a movie, Steve McQueen and Dust Hoffman. And the escape author wrote a book about his time there, Papillon. And this place of incredible beauty, this tropical place, was infested with poisonous asp, malaria-ridden mosquitoes, and eventually became a colony of lepers. And then the sad thing about what we have done to this planet is because of the curse of sin, we have taken paradise, and just like Milton, we lost it. But we don't have to lose the promises that Jesus gave us, because Jesus commands us to prepare for the end of time. Turn with me to Mark chapter 13. I'm going too far. I was in my Bible in the Old Testament. Mark chapter 13 and Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21 have this particular Olivet discourses, and it's got more information in others and less information in others. But in Mark 13:29, the emphatic command is emphasized. Even so, you too, when you see these signs happening, recognize that he is near, right at the door. We can see from the words of Jesus and other Bible writers like John and Peter that they were indeed living in a time of high expectancy. We have those same signs. We have that same signal, yet 2,000 years more removed. It simply means that the Christians will soon be gathered with all the saved to receive the reward of everlasting life. The preparation of the heart is supposed to be the priority that Christians must undertake as the signs are more and more apparent. There's an excellent Bible study series that I would recommend to you called Compelling Love. You can find them at compellinglove.org. Great Bible studies, all about enhancing the love that we have for God and asking for God to enhance the love that we have for our brothers and sisters. The Bible says, if it is possible, live at peace with all persons. Is there someone in your life? Is there a relationship in your life which you feel like could be improved? Is there a group that you're in that you feel that it's hard to read the room? It's hard to know what the culture is within that group or that station. Are you going through a particular time in which you seem to lack the right words to say or lack the skills it takes to resolve what seems like a peace-faking situation? I would propose to you that the readiness for Jesus' coming is the motivation, is the readiness that you have for Jesus to come is the readiness or motivation with which you have to resolve the personal relationships that you have. And I propose to you that the relationships that you have would benefit, and your Christian witness and your testimony regarding your friend Jesus Christ would be enhanced by the peace with which you exhibit relationships within your life. Because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The cliche is true. Whether it's a stranger off the streets or a candidate for baptism or the person that is most closest to you. Because ready or not, the second coming of Jesus will happen. It's only a matter of time now. You see the signs all around us, and it will happen to us. And I propose to you, within this sermon, I propose to you that the greatest act that you can do to be ready for the second coming of Jesus is to grow the love that you have in your heart for God and for other people. I'm so glad that you've joined us today, and I'd like to pray especially for you and for your walking your journey with God. Dear Jesus, we thank you so much for your grace, your mercy, and your love for us. We ask that you be with us today, dear Lord. We pray that the readiness that we have in our hearts would not come from a source of anxiety or fear, but that would be purely motivated by a desire to love you more, desire to love our fellow man more, and to avoid that coldness that prophecy tells us will happen within humanity. We pray that the readiness in our hearts would be from an attitude of seeing others as you see them, just like the parable of the sheep and goats. We know from the parable of the 10 virgins that we are to trim our lamps constantly. We pray for the Holy Spirit, dear Lord. But we also pray to be patient within the delay, as the parable of the unrighteous steward tells us. When we see the parable of the days of Noah, we look at the world around us, we can tell that man is giving in to every selfish craving that indulges his hearts. We don't want to be like that, dear Lord. We want to have the craving of your word. We want to hunger and thirst after righteousness, and we want that righteousness and hunger to compel us to love you more. Dear Lord, we trust that you love us because of your word, and we trust that you're faithful, and we ask for you to enhance that love that we have for one another. We pray this in Jesus' loving and precious name. Amen. God bless you, Woodside Church friends and family. We're glad that you've joined us today, and we hope that you are blessed.